Imagine watching a modern fairy tale unfold in real time, only to realize that every few chapters the script seems to change. For years, the public was presented with a carefully crafted image of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle as two people escaping royal pressure in search of peace, privacy, and freedom. But by 2026, that narrative has evolved into something far more complicated, far more strategic, and far more commercially driven than many ever expected. A fresh wave of rumors is now moving through Montecito, centered around plans for a lavish televised vow renewal ceremony. On the surface, it sounds romantic, a celebration of nearly 10 years of marriage. But insiders claim the event may actually serve another purpose entirely, the launch point for a new reality-style media project. That possibility raises a difficult question. Was the departure from royal life ever truly about escaping attention? Or was it about controlling the spotlight instead of avoiding it? Many royal historians still point back to the regret once expressed by Queen Elizabeth II over allowing cameras deeper access into royal life decades ago. She reportedly believed the line between monarchy and celebrity had become dangerously blurred. Critics now argue that Harry and Meghan have stepped directly into that blurred space, transforming intensely personal moments into carefully managed entertainment. To understand why the public conversation has become so heated, many point back to the birth of Prince Archie in 2019. What should have been a straightforward royal announcement instead became the beginning of years of public suspicion. Initially, the palace stated that Meghan had gone into labor that afternoon. Hours later, the narrative changed. Archie had actually been born much earlier that morning. That unexplained gap immediately triggered questions. For most celebrities, a timeline correction would be minor. But within the royal family, births are constitutional events tied to succession laws and centuries-old protocol. Every detail matters. Traditionally, royal births involve signed confirmations from royal physicians, official notices, and tightly documented procedures intended to eliminate doubt about legitimacy. In Archie's case, several customary steps were noticeably absent, fueling years of speculation online. The situation became even more controversial because British succession law still contains the historic born of the body principle. Under traditional constitutional interpretation, heirs must be physically born to the royal mother. That archaic wording may sound outdated today, but it remains part of the legal framework surrounding succession. Because of that, every missing signature or altered timeline became magnified in the public imagination. Critics argue that secrecy created the very conspiracy theories the couple wanted to avoid. Supporters counter that Harry and Meghan were simply trying to protect their family from the invasive media environment that contributed to the death of Princess Diana. But in a system built on transparency and ceremony, withholding information often creates more questions than answers. At the same time, observers increasingly believe that Megxit itself may have been less of an emotional escape and more of a long-term strategic transition. Before entering royal life, Meghan already operated within elite media and networking circles connected to places like Soho House. Critics now suggest that California was always the intended destination, a place where royal prestige could merge with Hollywood influence and global branding opportunities. The speed with which major media contracts appeared after the Sussexes stepped back from royal duties added fuel to that theory. Massive deals with streaming platforms and podcast companies seemed to materialize almost immediately. But by 2026, the financial landscape reportedly looks far less stable. The collapse of the Spotify partnership and growing reports that Netflix had reduced its commitment signaled that the couple's media empire might not be as secure as once believed. That financial pressure appears to be pushing the Sussex brand into increasingly commercial territory. Meghan's growing involvement in lifestyle ventures, AI-powered fashion platforms, and luxury product branding has created a sharp contrast with Harry's original public messaging about privacy and protection. Critics say the contradiction has become impossible to ignore. On one hand, the children are supposedly shielded from public exposure. On the other hand, their names, birth references, and royal titles are increasingly tied to branding strategies and product marketing. The divide between Harry and Meghan's professional paths has also become more visible. Meghan appears focused on building a modern luxury lifestyle empire, while Harry increasingly leans back toward causes connected to military service, security, and global diplomacy. His reported trips to the UK and controversial visit to Ukraine in 2026 only intensified speculation that the couple may now be operating as two separate brands under one marriage. Meanwhile, Harry's legal and reputational struggles continue to grow. One of the most shocking developments involved Centibail, the charity he established in honor of Princess Diana. Reports that legal action emerged involving the organization created a damaging narrative around a man once viewed as the monarchy's most relatable and popular royal figure. At the same time, the royal family itself has largely responded with silence. King Charles III and Prince William appear determined to avoid public confrontation. Instead of responding directly to documentaries, interviews, or memoir accusations, the palace strategy increasingly seems focused on distance and stability. Royal observers argue that this contrast has become one of the defining images of modern monarchy. The Wales family presenting institutional continuity, while the Sussexes present personal storytelling and celebrity branding. The children remain at the center of the controversy. Princess Lilibet and Archie are rarely seen publicly, and when they do appear, it is usually through carefully curated photographs or edited promotional content. That level of control has only intensified online speculation, with critics dissecting everything from voice clips to image consistency. So supporters see this as normal parental protection. Detractors see it as deliberate narrative management. The larger issue may ultimately come down to trust. Public trust is difficult to maintain when timelines shift, stories evolve, and branding overlaps with deeply personal family matters. The Sussexes wanted independence from the monarchy, but independence comes with a different kind of pressure, the need to constantly generate relevance, attention, and revenue. Now, as 2026 continues, the central question surrounding Harry and Meghan is no longer whether they can remain famous. They clearly can. The real question is whether they can move beyond a carefully controlled image and convince the public that there is still something authentic underneath the strategy. Because once audiences begin noticing the gaps between the frames, they stop focusing on the fairy tale itself and start searching for what's being hidden in the edit. The deeper this story goes, the more it begins to resemble a collision between two completely different worlds. On one side stands the British monarchy, an institution built on ritual, hierarchy, and centuries of carefully preserved tradition. On the other side is the modern celebrity machine, where visibility equals power and every personal moment can be transformed into content. What makes the situation surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle so fascinating in 2026 is that they are attempting to live inside both systems at the same time, even though the rules of those systems directly contradict each other. That contradiction is becoming harder to hide. One of the biggest warning signs came from the growing number of reports suggesting that Hollywood itself is beginning to cool on the Sussex brand. For years, major studios and streaming companies saw Harry and Meghan as untapped gold. Royalty mixed with celebrity culture, controversy mixed with exclusivity. It looked like the perfect formula. But Hollywood is ruthless when it comes to numbers, and insiders now claim patience inside the entertainment industry is wearing thin. The original excitement around their projects was driven by novelty. Audiences wanted the palace secrets, the untold stories, the emotional interviews. But once the documentaries aired and the memoirs were published, a difficult question emerged. What comes after the revelations? Critics argue that the Sussex brand became trapped inside its own origin story. Every new project still circles back to royal conflict because that conflict remains the most valuable part of the brand itself. That creates an exhausting cycle. To stay relevant, the story must continue, But the longer the conflict continues, the more public sympathy begins to erode. Even former supporters are starting to ask whether the couple truly wants healing or whether the tension itself has become the product being sold. This is especially visible in the way their public image has shifted from activism to luxury lifestyle branding. Meghan's expansion into fashion technology, home products, and influencer-style marketing has sparked fierce debate online. Critics say it feels disconnected from the humanitarian image the couple originally promoted after leaving royal life. Supporters counter that Meghan is simply building a modern business empire in the same way many celebrities do. But royal titles complicate everything. The use of prince, princess, duke, and duchess inside commercial spaces continues to trigger controversy on both sides of the Atlantic. In Britain, critics argue that royal status should never become a sales tool. In America, constitutional traditionalists question why aristocratic branding is being normalized so aggressively in a republic founded on rejecting inherited privilege. This is why every product launch now attracts scrutiny far beyond the products themselves. A candle is no longer just a candle. A lifestyle brand is no longer just a lifestyle brand. Everything becomes symbolic. Every appearance raises larger questions about identity, legitimacy, and the true purpose of stepping away from royal duties in the first place. At the same time, the silence coming from Buckingham Palace has become almost as powerful as the Sussex media machine itself. King Charles III rarely addresses the controversy publicly, and Prince William appears even less willing to engage. That silence has created a fascinating dynamic where the monarchy often gains stability simply by refusing to participate in the chaos. Royal insiders increasingly describe William as focused almost entirely on institutional survival. To him, the issue is no longer emotional, it is structural. The monarchy depends on public trust, predictability, and continuity. Any prolonged uncertainty surrounding title succession or constitutional norms represents a long-term risk. That is why discussions about Archie and Lilibet continue to generate such intense attention. They are not simply celebrity children. They exist inside the official line of succession to the British throne. That fact transforms ordinary family privacy into a constitutional issue, whether Harry and Meghan want it to or not. Meanwhile, reports of professional separation between the couple continue to grow louder. Public appearances increasingly happen apart. Meghan's world appears centered around California media culture, celebrity networks, and business expansion. Harry's appearances feel more tied to military causes, veterans, legal disputes, and his ongoing battles over security arrangements in the UK. Some observers believe this split is strategic. Others believe it reflects genuine tension behind closed doors. Either way, the contrast is impossible to ignore. Meghan often appears energized by visibility and reinvention, while Harry increasingly looks weighed down by isolation, litigation, and unresolved anger toward the press and the institution he left behind. That emotional divide may become the defining challenge of the next phase of their lives. Because underneath all the branding, documentaries, interviews, and rumors sits a far more human question. What happens when two people leave one system behind, only to discover that the new system comes with its own prison? Royal life demanded silence, duty and sacrifice. Celebrity culture demands exposure, performance, and constant reinvention. Harry and Meghan escaped one machine only to become dependent on another. And unlike the monarchy, Hollywood loyalty disappears the moment public attention fades. This is why the conversation surrounding authenticity has become so central. The public no longer just wants polished interviews and cinematic documentaries. They want consistency. They want timelines that make sense. They want behavior that aligns with messaging. Every contradiction weakens the emotional connection the couple once had with millions around the world. Even the rumors surrounding a televised vow renewal reflect that shift. What might once have looked romantic now risks being interpreted as content strategy. Audiences have become far more skeptical about moments designed for emotional impact. People increasingly ask whether they are witnessing real life or carefully produced narrative management. And perhaps that is the greatest irony of the entire Sussex saga. The couple originally framed their departure as a search for freedom and authenticity. Yet, 6 years later, they appear more controlled by branding pressures than ever before. Every appearance is analyzed. Every statement is dissected. Every photograph becomes evidence in an endless public debate over truth, image, and motive. The fairy tale never truly disappeared. It simply evolved into a different genre entirely. What began as a royal love story has transformed into something closer to a global case study on fame, identity, and the price of turning personal life into a permanent public business. And as 2026 continues, the central mystery may no longer be whether Harry and Meghan can survive outside the monarchy. The real mystery is whether they can ever escape the version of themselves they created for the world.